What's up, Squadron? Aviation has given me a ton of amazing experiences. And more importantly, it's introduced me to a whole new family of friends. Join us tonight because we're cleared direct for some hangar flying. I'm Ryan Dembroski, and this is SuperAero Live. What is up, SuperAero Squadron, AvGeek, nerd friends? Thanks for joining us. It's Wednesday, which can only mean one thing. It's time for another episode of SuperAero Live, where tonight, I guess we're competing with the vice president debate, and this is far less stressful. So you guys already made up your mind. You don't need to know anything about that. You just gotta get your vote in and then watch this show. Anyway, all right. So, thanks for joining us after taking a week off. I needed the break. It was good. And I apologize that the guys in that intro video couldn't show up. They had some scheduling changes. So, that episode with the Thunderbirds has been pushed a couple weeks down instead of this past Monday. Sorry for everyone who I left hanging with that. I thought I communicated and I didn't. But anyway, with that apology, you should smash the like button, all that YouTube jazz, subscribe, and Patreon supporters, all you guys who are supporting me on Patreon, thank you so much. Be sure to join Patreon if you guys want to hang out with us after the show. We do a little like debrief thing, and our guest tonight's going to join us for that, just to talk a little bit more about all the stuff we're talking about tonight. So, I'm talking too much, and you guys came for more. That was a bad transition. I always try to do like a dad joke transition. Guys, Ryan Mohr is here. Let me pull him up here. There he is.
How you doing,
Ryan?
Nice segue. I've never heard anybody use my last name like that before.
That's got to be a lie.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time, right? Yeah.
Right.
So we're both Ryans, and I wanted to ask you, just before we get into airplanes and before I really introduce you, like, what was your like childhood nickname around your name? Because I had a couple really bad ones. I'm wondering if you had bad ones too.
I didn't actually have one around Ryan. Everybody called me Tall Tina because we read a story in third grade about a girl that matured early, and I was the tallest kid in my class. So everybody called me Tall Tina. I didn't have a Ryan nickname. What was yours?
Well, mine was Crying Ryan.
Oh.
It's really mean. And then Rye Bread was the other. My dad called me Rye Bread, which is fine. That's good. That's funny.
I get Rhino a lot.
Rhino. See, that would be good too. I don't have any of the good ones. Anyway, all right. Let's stop. No one's here for us to do therapy. So Ryan, you're here tonight to talk to us about how we can be safe and legal putting cameras on airplanes. But you sent me a little note, and I was doing some Googling, and like you're kind of like, you're not just like the camera guy. Like, I think the camera stuff you're doing is super cool, obviously near and dear to my heart. But like, I also want to, like, I want to pull up this thing. You sent me this video, and you're like, I did all the flying in this video. I'm just gonna put it right there. Like, you've done some extreme flying in your days. I'm wondering if you could just give us like, what's the Ryan Mohr origin story? Because there's some serious flying in here. Like, there's got mountains and there's a biplane later.
Yeah, born into aviation, fourth generation pilot. My great grandfather built a lot of his own aircraft back in the day, and my dad was a big name air show performer for many years. So I followed along, going to air shows, meeting people, and getting to fly a lot of unique aircraft. And you start getting time in some cool round engine tailwheel aircraft, and before you know it, that leads to something else, and you start flight instructing. And so I've been very fortunate. I've been lucky to fly a lot of unique, one of a kind aircraft, and one thing just keeps leading to the next.
I mean, you said something like over 100 types.
Yeah, and that's not counting like a Cessna 172N and a Cessna 172D or anything like that. It just back, you know how it is when you're young, you first start flying, and any chance for a free flight hour you don't have to pay for, you jump on it. And like I said, because I had a lot of tail wheel time and round engine time and seaplane and everything, I was ferrying aircraft all over the country, doing test flights for people, helping restore a lot of antique aircraft. So there's just a lot of unique one-off aircraft that I've had the opportunity to fly. So the numbers started adding up. I'm getting old now, so it adds up pretty quick.
So, and then you kind of mentioned separately, like you grew up in an air show family. I'm just curious, like, what's that like? That seems like every airplane kid's dream. Like, what is that like?
Back in the day, it was amazing going to all these shows, getting in a way, backstage passes, getting to meet all the air show performers and hang out with them, and later getting to do a lot of flying with them for photo flights and media day and stuff like that. So it was a blast. I mean, I was very lucky. I probably didn't realize at the time how lucky I was to be around that.
And then I think the last thing I wanted to ask you about, sorry, and I'm just kind of like zoning out looking at all this amazing footage of you flying here, but like there's some time you said you spent some time with the Red Baron Squadron, and I feel like we could do a whole show on that just by itself, but do you have like how do you go? I mean, I think the path to pilot for you is fairly obvious, right? Like growing up in aviation, the way that you did with your dad and stuff, but like how do you suddenly become a Red Baron pilot?
Right place at the right time. Like I said, one thing just kind of leads into another. If you have a passion for aviation and you're out at the airport every day, I grew up ferrying my dad's steerman to and from air shows, so I had a ton of steerman time. After I'd get to the air show, the first thing I'd do is I'd unload all the baggage, and if there was some time before the sunset, I'd just go up and do acro, until the sun was going down. So when I was in the airlines after 9/11, things slowed down, and I was stuck in the bottom of the seniority list, kind of looking for something else. And I was doing a pre-buy on a buddy's airplane, and the Red Barons happened to be there. And I started talking to him, and I said, "Hey, does your corporate flight department or anybody looking for pilots?" And he's like, "Well, for the Red Barons, you need to have a bunch of tail wheel time." And I'm like, "Well, I've got this many thousand hours of tail wheel time." "Well, you'd have to have a bunch of steerman time." "Well, I've got this many hundreds of hours of steerman time." So we kept talking, and one thing led to another. Luckily, they had a guy that was coming off the team, and they needed somebody, and I left the airlines to go fly for Red Barons. It was like a dream come true. It was a corporate flying job, getting to give aerobatic rides in a steerman, 401k and the whole deal. It was a blast.
That makes me so mad. Sorry, I mean in like a good way. That's amazing. I just finally started earning 401k stuff at my dumb office job last year or a couple of years ago. So that's amazing. That's really good. So I'm just going to check in with people in the chat here. We got a couple people in the chat from kind of all over the world. Dutchy Girl, good morning. Dutchy Girl, thanks for joining us. 782 Papa's here. He says he's tired of COVID. Yeah. And 72 Papa's in Wisconsin, where it's particularly bad right now, so I feel you, brother. Sarah Clucky's here. She's doing her flight training. Dude, so many people. Nick Mohr is here. He's got questions. He actually was the one asking about your dad and all that. He knew you from your air show career and your dad's air show career.
Hey, Nick.
Okay, you know that guy. See, everyone knows everyone in aviation.
Well, the last name. It's not quite the same spelling, but it's close. It's a good name.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Zach Sherman says already this is way better than the bait. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
Airmac is here. Dude, everyone's here. I could just read names all night, but this is awesome that you guys are here. All right, let's jump into, I think, the main event. I mean, we could talk about all this other stuff. There's this tiny little video playing over us. I was like, what happened to the video? There it is. This is real professional. This is professional television. I think when you were talking about the. Oh, I'm trying to get it lined up live. Let's make it big. There we go. Got it. All right, check it out. This is the part we missed. Was like, where's this stuff? Like, that's some real deal flying, man. I don't have any time in like a proper Stearman. I only have time in a Boeing Stearman Speed Mail, which people have heard me talk about.
Speed Mail, that's a cool Stearman. There's only a handful of those flying.
I just remember feeling like it was very big.
Yes, that's a big Stearman.
It felt big. It felt big, and then like the stick had it was almost like a 8-ball or something on it. Like it's huge. It was just this huge, like wrestling this thing. Really fun aircraft. Anyway, okay. So let's talk a little bit about cameras. So like you did all that, right? You did all this stuff, this amazing airplane stuff, and you're still doing amazing airplanes. You're even an A&P, right?
A&P IA, yep.
Like, where do you find time to do anything, man?
Yeah, exactly.
So you do all that stuff. I'm curious about where the Flight Flix thing come from, because I obviously, I mean, this is not a sponsored piece of content, but like I've used your stuff. I know a lot of people that have been on this show before use your stuff. Like, tell me about how did that start? You're flying biplanes and all this other stuff, and then like you decide to start a company that makes camera mounts.
Yeah, so back before GoPros even hit the market, like you said, I had the opportunity to fly all these different airplanes, give flight instruction and all these things. And that little clip of the Grumman Albatross you saw, which is like the big Jimmy Buffett flying boat, the guy I was flying for at the time wanted to take it to Greenland. So we planned this trip to Greenland, and I was buying all the survival gear and everything we needed off of Aircraft Spruce. And here I see this GoPro on there, and I'm like, oh yeah, those cameras. God, I'm going on this once of a lifetime trip. I should get one of those cool cameras.
Yeah.
So I got it and literally gorilla taped it out on the wing of the airplane, and we got this amazing iceberg footage. And after the trip, it was like, this is amazing. I got to do more of this. And the owner of the aircraft said the same thing. We need to get more footage of this kind of stuff. So I bought more cameras. And I quickly learned that there just wasn't good quality mounts or ways to mount it safely out on the outside of the aircraft. Now we finally have this technology where we can take this little tiny camera and put it on the outside and get this cool perspective nobody's ever gotten before, but there's not a good, safe way to do it. So the hangar that we were running those aircraft out of, we had a full machine shop, and I just started making myself camera mounts. And I quickly learned that vibration was an issue, and the speed and the temperature, and there's all these challenges. So for 4 years, it was just trial and error, trying to find the perfect combination of materials and design and different things for myself to get good video quality. I had never an intention of starting this company. Fast forward a few years later, I move on to the airlines. I've got some time in my hands, and I think, I like doing this video thing. It's fun. I was making fun videos of the Albatross and these aircraft I was flying. And I thought I should offer this service to others. So hence Flight Flix was supposed to be a business where I would go out and record video for folks and put a video together for them. Well, I found more people were interested in the way I mounted the cameras to the aircraft and how I got good, stable video and how I did it, and the quote unquote legality of it with the FAA. So because I had spent so much time with this, and because of my maintenance background, and I'm a commercial pilot and flight instructor and everything, I spent a lot of time researching, making sure that I was doing this in a safe and FAA compliant manner. So before you know it, I had people starting to ask me for if I could make them a mount, and so on and so forth. Here we are now. Now I've got the biggest camera mount company in aviation.
So I think, and here's my next, maybe it's not the most obvious question, but Zach actually, Zach is like our resident live chat, like zinger joke guy. And he said, "I'm excited for this topic. Seems to be a pretty big debate in the aviation space." But he's hitting on something that I think a lot of people wonder about, right? I mean, for me, you know, I was doing my pilot training kind of like right when GoPros, like the GoPro 1, right? And so I remember like buying clamps off Amazon and trying to like clamp it to that vertical member above the strut, and then having my flight instructor be like, "Yeah, but like don't tighten it too much because you're gonna ruin it. You're gonna like squeeze that airfoil shape." And I was just doing that for like debrief, right? I just wanted to like debrief, and I could use those clamps to put it on the tube and fabric fairly easily. But or the tubes right in the cockpit, I just lucked out that I was training in that. But once I moved to a Cessna, I was like, I don't know, like how am I gonna be safe? How do I do this? Right.
Just look under section 91-123 under how to mount a GoPro, right? There's nothing in the FARs, and if you go and ask the FAA, they don't want to touch that, because the FAA only, they only deal with black and white. So if you ask them a question, they're going to err on the side of you can't. So the real quick gist, first of all, safety is the biggest thing. Making sure it's not going to fall off the airplane. And now that more people are doing it, you think people would be doing it safer, but in a way, there's a lot of people that are saying, well, everybody else is doing it, or I saw somebody else do it this way, it must be okay. Even airshow performers, I see airshow performers putting sticky mounts on the airplane. That's not really safe. So there's essentially three ways to tackle this, and really what we're doing is, as soon as you attach a camera to an airplane, the only section of the regulations it falls under is modifying the airplane. So as soon as you make a mount and screw it in somewhere on the airplane, the FAA in a lot of ways is going to look at that as, okay, you've altered the airplane. So now it's more of a maintenance thing where it falls under repairs and alterations, and we can do that. You can sit down with your flight instructor, it's not your flight instructor, your mechanic. You can sit down with your mechanic and say, okay, if we take this mount and a GoPro, we put it in this location, there's kind of a list. We've got it available on our website too, but there's a maintenance checklist that says, is this going to affect the aircraft weight and balance? Is it going to affect the performance? Is it going to, is it going to have an extreme effect on the way the airplane flies? And if you go down the list and it doesn't say, and you feel that it isn't going to affect the aircraft, then you could say it's just a minor alteration and it takes a logbook entry. If you're a commercial operator, or you and your mechanic, you as the owner operator or the mechanic says, I think this could affect aerodynamics. If we put it on the top of the wing, it could affect the way the airplane stalls. Then we need to do an FAA approval. So there's a process for that. The third way is temporary. And that's what most of us are doing, is just like you would put a yoke mount with your iPad in the cockpit, you've temporarily attached that to the airplane. You can take it off and on anytime you want. It's definitely temporary. And there's a lot of camera mounts and a lot of ways we can mount cameras to an aircraft internally and externally, and it's considered temporary. The tough thing with temporary is there's no definition of temporary.
So that's what I was going to ask you about.
It's a little bit of a gray area. There is a little bit of guidance, especially when it comes to portable devices in the cockpit. But in a way, the fact that it's vague is kind of a good thing, as long as we're being safe. And that's the big thing I push, is don't give the FAA a reason to start to make regulations. A good example is in Australia. A number of years ago, people were doing this, and the equivalent of the FAA there just said, that's it, no cameras on airplanes. So there is no temporary. You just have to get an approval to put a camera on an airplane. Whereas here, if we do it in a temporary manner and it's safe and it's obviously not going to affect aircraft performance, then we can go ahead and do that. And most of our products are designed around that, where it's definitely temporary.
So, and I think you're highlighting on something that's really interesting. Well, you hit a number of things. I think, that I'm thinking back to like my very early experiments with this stuff, probably before I was aware of the products that exist out there from you and other companies that are more solid, right? Like GoPro's out there saying like, hey, like this suction mount will stay on until 200 miles an hour. And so I'm like, all right, like, right? Like put it on the wing. And then I'm thinking as I'm flying, like, man, if that thing lets go, like I want it gone, right? Like, so I'm having this mental conversation weighing the which rule I'm going to break. Right? Like, am I going to have it, if I secured it to the plane, is it going to, like, detach and then have the safety cable bash, it's going to be in the slipstream bashing the wing apart while I try to get down? Or is it going to FOD down into the field and kill a cow or something?
Definitely don't do tethers. I see that approach every once in a while. Somebody's like, well, this mount could come off, so I'm going to put a little safety strap and tether it on. Well, as soon as it does come off, you've got something flapping against the bottom of the wing out there, just beating up your airplane. So that's definitely not a good idea.
It felt like a way, I mean, it felt like a good way to get yourself into way more trouble if something went wrong. But so I guess like now, my point being, and I think so like there's a video of SuperAero that I haven't released yet where I flew a Cessna up to 16,000 feet. I got the oxygen tank back here. I don't know. You've done a lot of daredevil-y stuff. For me, that was like the most, felt like I was going to space. I'll release it eventually, right? And I got the cannula and everything, and I remember looking at like out on the wing and seeing like that suction mount and thinking, like doing the like mental calculus in my head about like, oh, like there's a real air pressure thing happening now.
At what point does that air expand and the suction?
Right, like how long is that thing going to stay on there? And it, I don't know, through some higher power, that thing stayed on, and we made it down with it. It lasted the whole thing. But just like in retrospect, right? Like, was that the right decision to do that?
No, you're right, and that's what I always tell people. Temporary is a great thing as long as it's not too temporary. So, right. And that, I just kind of followed our standard maintenance practices. Anytime we mount a camera, make sure it has redundancy, multiple fasteners. So and using nylock nuts, safety wire, all those things, just like it was anything else attached to the aircraft. Make sure that you have redundancy built in. So if something does fail or loosen up, it's not going to depart the aircraft or hit a piece of the aircraft or jam any controls or anything like that.
So I think, if I were to summarize things, I would say, like, one, like, in terms of what Zach was talking about, in terms of the debate, like, it sounds like you have a pretty fairly robust rubric in terms of how we can make sure that this is legal, one, right? Like, before we talk, I mean, we've talked about safety, and that's always everyone's first priority, but I think the debate part is maybe, I don't know, I'm holding my thumb up still. I've been doing this thing a lot when I talk because... like the politicians are like I've been doing that a lot lately. Anyway, so the legal side of it, like there's a fairly, to summarize kind of what you just said, like there's a fairly robust argument in favor of being able to do this because of temporary and or other ways to approach it if you wanted to do something maybe less temporary.
Right. Well, and talking about Australia again, I actually have a fan and customer that is working hard in Australia to make it more lenient or have approvals for cameras, because they actually had an accident over there where this airplane unfortunately crashed and burned. The only thing that was left of it was one of my camera mounts and the melted plastic of a GoPro. They were able to recover the memory card. And in this scenario he gave me, there was this mechanic got blamed for it, and the family was trying to sue the mechanic and everything else. Turns out it was just pilot error. The pilot came in and bounced a couple of times. There was a prop strike, tried to go around, and ended up crashing the airplane. They were able to get the footage on the camera. So just like we do in the airlines and in the corporate world, this video, and the FAA is much more open to this now, where let's use our mistakes as a learning tool for everybody to learn from, so we can all as a community be a better flying community. And cameras are a great training tool. I can't tell you how many times I've mounted a camera on an airplane. We've done a flight, and after the flight, we're watching the video, and it's like, hey, look at that. The gear, after they come down, are actually bumping back a little bit. Like we've noticed maintenance issues after the fact. So there's so many positive ways to use these, and the idea that we're going to put a camera on the airplane and the FAA is going to come out and ramp check us and bust us really isn't a way to look at it. And for the most part, they're not trying to do that. I do have stories from feds where they literally have seen cameras taped to heated pitot tubes. They've seen cameras mounted to control surfaces. They had somebody mount a GoPro to the rudder of a Cirrus. That's a balance.
I was literally going to bring up the Cirrus rudder video I saw.
Yeah. It's like, come on, people, definitely do your research. And if you see something like that, you don't have to bust somebody's balls on it, but help them out, because some people just, they think, hey, these cameras can go anywhere. They don't realize that if you mounted a camera to a balanced control surface and you got flutter, it could literally rip the tail off of the airplane. So every airplane has some great locations we can mount to: tie down rings, wing struts, handles, inspection covers under the wing. You name it. Every aircraft has some cool mounting locations that are very safe, good quality video. And the coolest thing is guys like you that are YouTubers and all these positive. Great.
Whoa.
Nice. Let me mute you for a second here.
No problem.
Oh, okay.
Is there a fire?
Well, oh my gosh.
Go for it. Do your thing. Do your thing. I'm gonna say hi to some people in.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, there's not a fire. I think my kids are just changing the battery on the fire alarm because it was beeping. But we're good. We're good.
I was just gonna say real quick, since we had the interruption. Pilot Annie's here in the chat. She says, "Hey everyone," and everyone needs to say congrats to Pilot Annie, because I just saw on the interwebs today that she's engaged now. So good job, or whatever people say. What did people say to me 10 years ago when I had hope? Sorry, kids change ya. Kids change ya. One thing at a time, Annie. Okay, anyway.
Good luck, Annie.
It's gonna be awesome, Annie.
It is.
We're selling it real hard. So, I hit that again.
Pretty soon you'll have kids setting off the smoke alarm while you're on a live video.
Right.
Yeah.
So that might be a good thing for me. And here I am. So that's one thing I was going to ask you. So I think, and I apologize because I'm so excited about this topic because I'm passionate about it. I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit in terms of, we've talked about how it's legal. We talked about safe. If you were to break down the safety thing, obviously we talked about control surfaces or instrumentation or pitot-static system. Any other big safety tips in terms of obviously using hardware? You're a big proponent, I know, of using metal hardware as opposed to plastic.
Yeah. No. So that's the big things. No sticky mounts, no suction cups, and no plastic. Those are the big ones. If you're using any of the standard GoPro stuff, even the GoPro case, not to focus on GoPro because there's all kinds of different camera manufacturers out there, but GoPro is kind of the standard. And
they're the Kleenex.
Exactly, they're the Xerox. So even the plastic case, they break, and they're strong. But over a period of time with UV exposure and vibration, the elements that we, subject these things to in aviation are extreme in temperature and vibration and all these things. So plastic breaks. If we're using metal, it's not going to break.
So no control surfaces, blah 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 instruments.
A good one is
not on top of wings or whatever you said.
Exactly, not on top of a lifting surface. That's one that I always explain. If you ever seen on a lot of the Moonies, they have the air brakes. The air brakes are like smaller than my hands, about the size of a GoPro.
Sure.
And it's amazing when those little air brakes flip up out of the top of the wing. The amount of drag it has it's impressive. So you put a couple GoPros on the top of your lifting surface, it's gonna affect it. So one way to think about that is anywhere that you could mount an antenna is probably going to be okay to mount a camera. So on the fuselage, underneath the wing, on an area of the tail that's not near a control surface. So that's one way to look at it.
So if you fly, what's that home built? The Delta Dyke Delta, then you can't do it because it's just a lifting body, right? You're out of luck. That's
you stumped me. I've been stumped.
All right, Google. We'll figure that one out. I'm gonna I'll do a video about one, and you can tell me where it's safe. Pilot Annie responded, thanks, and then she said separately that she uses your mounts a lot, and she recently used them on an A-Star and an R66, and it was great. Yeah, we haven't even talked about helicopters.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother thing.
Pilot Annie, she has some really cool posts lately with the 360 cameras. Pretty cool stuff.
Question coming in from Bennett. Bennett's wondering, he said, so we're talking a lot about outside mounting, but he's asking, am I okay with suction cupping to a side window inside the plane?
Absolutely. The FAA answer to that is there's a little section in the regulations that it can't be a distraction to you as a pilot. You're not supposed to use any electronic device or anything if it's going to be a distraction. So, and some YouTubers have been busted a little bit on that, where they got all these cameras running. Really, you're supposed to turn them on the ground and let them go, and not operate them in flight and mess with them. So kind of the same thing. If you're in the takeoff roll and that suction cup is going to fall down on the rudder pedals, that's a problem. But as far as using them internally, not a problem. Other than personally, on a lot of airplanes like Cessnas, that the plexiglass vibrates real bad. So you gotta pick your spot. I like the front windscreen right on the side. Where there's a little bit of a contour. That's usually a pretty good solid place. But
I was gonna say that's where I always put one, is on that vertical part of the windscreen. It feels like it doesn't move at all.
Yep.
And I will just back up. I guess this is just like confession time with camera confessions with Ryan and Ryan. I've definitely had in cruise flight, I've had a suction mount in the cockpit fall off of the windscreen, tumble over the instrument panel, and hit the flaps.
Oh, nice.
And actually activate the flaps. And, it took 10 seconds to figure out why the aircraft was doing things. I mean, it wasn't serious, right? But it was doing uncommanded things.
Yeah.
And so Bennett, I guess, might use that as a warning. Like, you gotta think way ahead about all that stuff, because even though you're inside, it's not gonna fall off and hit somebody. It could interfere with your control surfaces. Probably should have filled out a NASA report for that one.
Yeah, that's right. I think you were probably going to go this direction, Ryan, and we had kind of a good segue there. Like yourself and all these great YouTubers, and anybody that's willing to share video of their flying. I have 3 young boys myself that are all under the age of 11. And it's I always tell people the story, because my dad was one of the top 10 air show performers in the country. Kids used to walk up to him and have him sign their autograph. So 2 years ago, we're at Oshkosh, and we've got Aviation 101 and a bunch of guys coming to the booth to do meet and greets, Baron Pilot. and my boys are just enamored by these YouTubers. I mean, that's this generation. They're all about, everything they learn is from YouTube, and they want these guys autographed. They're wearing their shirts, and an airshow performer walks by, and they're kind of like, oh yeah, is that guy that flies that one airplane? And my dad watches this, and he's just like, that's unreal. These, no offense, Josh, but some guy that flies his 172 to get a hamburger, and he's my dad that spent years, learning how to do these low level aerobatics and a steerman. But I bring that up because any of you, whether you're using cameras and recording video or not, I think it's a great way to keep aviation alive and get the next generation interested. Myself being an antique classic pilot and loving the Stearmans and all these airplanes, my fear is someday that there just isn't going to be many people around to fly them and maintain them. So I'm all about shooting a video and not taking one person up for a ride, but now with one video, we can take 1,000 people up for a ride, and hopefully that sparks one kid's interest in wanting to do that themselves.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I was excited to hear you go that route because I thought you were going to be like, and also, no one be like Ryan and screw up with the camera. But no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, I think, and there is something to be said about responsibility, right? And Annie and I have talked about this, and other folks in there. Like, there is a certain amount of responsibility because now, and I see this professionally as like a cinema guy professionally, right? Like, we're putting things out into the world, and we have a responsibility to make sure that we're being, I don't know, it's like there's no, anyone can now think about like how crazy it is that we're doing a live show right now over the internet and people can watch it, whereas like even 10 years ago we would need to have like a sponsored deal in a studio to get this done, or like a cable access channel or something, right? So that's crazy. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I think it's one of the cooler things that's happened to aviation is, my dumb channel notwithstanding, like the ability of people to get inspired. You think about, and also the way you can track trends in aviation right now. And I feel like there's somewhat people sharing the even just normal, like I was just, so for instance, a friend of mine is maybe gonna get rid of a Citabria, and I just was like, oh, Citabrias are cool. And I spent all this time watching Citabria videos, and there are no like influencers flying Citabrias right now, although Mel the Traveler just bought one, but whatever, like there's no one making like Citabria content, right? But I go on YouTube and I can Google it, and I bet a lot of people are using your mounts, right? And they're like, here's me going upside down in the Citabria or whatever. And I spent a whole night, sorry, Kristen, my wife, spent a whole night like looking at Citabria videos because all these people are able to share this thing they're passionate about. So I think it's super cool. Not enough people doing vintage stuff right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, I don't have anything to follow you up with there.
No, that's all right. Well, you were telling me separately, just like you showed me a picture. I didn't load it in for the show tonight, but you showed me a picture. You've got a J3 in your family. It's like, how many generations?
My boys will be the 5th generation to fly this J3.
And J3s are near and dear to me.
Oh, we talked about, I've been able to fly over 100 different aircraft, and sometimes people ask me what's your favorite. It's still the J3, and for me it might be just because that's what I learned in, but at the same time there's just something about the simplicity. I mean, you got 4 gauges, no electrical system. I mean, it is true stick and rudder, seat of the pants, just low and slow, door open. You can't beat it. And and we're lucky. It was my great grandfather's. My dad soloed in it. I soloed in it. So I have 3 boys. There's a chance at least one of them will hopefully fly it.
That's awesome. That's super awesome. Yeah, it's the best airplane. I should buy one of those, not the Citabria.
Yes. Yeah.
A clipped wing one, so I can still do loopy doopies. All right.
There you go.
Anyway, guys, before we this hour is like blowing past, and I want to make sure everyone's like, wow, that's amazing. Sarah Clucky's about to get some training in some J3s from what I understand. So that's cool. You should keep that up, Sarah. Anyone else has any questions about mounting camera? I know we kind of bounced all over because I'm camera nerd, but make sure to hit us up while we've still got Ryan on the line. I think one of the questions that popped up is like, so what do you do if you're in I think Bennett was like following up. He said, if I can't mount stuff on a lifting surface, how would I get those dope vids showing me in a Piper? Okay, I'm assuming so at J3 you could do the struts, but I think he's probably talking about like a Cherokee or something.
Yeah, and when we say lifting surface, we're talking on the top of the lifting surface. The top of the wing is where the lift is made. Under the wing, no problem. Tie down ring, your wingtip usually has screws in it, inspection covers, like you said, the wing strut. If you're talking Cherokee low wing aircraft, there's usually a handle to grab onto when you get up on the wing. There's the step that you step on. You can clamp onto that. The tail tie down ring is a great spot to get that angle, the gear coming up if you have a retract. So there's a lot of cool places to mount to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the impulse, right, is to... I only have jet toys. Sorry. The impulse is to, like, put it here on a low wing, right? Like, aiming
right
in. But that's technically spoilering. You've got a spoiler on your wing then, right?
And there's a few things like that where we kind of get into... It depends on the airplane. Out on the wingtip of a Cherokee, really the lift is gone at that point. When you're out right on the wingtip, in the middle of the wing, that's definitely a big no-no. And the faster, cleaner the aircraft, the more of an effect a camera is going to have on it. So something like a Cirrus, yeah, I wouldn't put it on the top of the wingtip unless you do an FA approval, and that's possible too. And don't be scared when somebody says 337 or FA approval. When you're talking a camera and a mount that's less than a pound and real small, a lot of times an FA approval really isn't that hard to do.
Is there a short summary of that? I mean, assume you like drop it on there, write some stuff, and then go fly it, make sure it works. Is that sounds maybe?
In some cases there could be test flights. Typically with a camera and mount that's under a pound. In a lot of cases, it won't even need a test flight. We just need to say that structurally it's in a spot that it's not going to affect the aircraft structurally. There again, there's kind of a checklist that we go down. And so with a temporary mount, you, the pilot in command, are saying, I am assuming full responsibility for the way I mounted this camera. If we do a minor alteration or a logbook entry, then your A&P mechanic has to make that logbook entry, and that A&P mechanic is now assuming full responsibility, saying we've mounted this in a location in a manner that's going to be safe and not affect the aircraft. And if your mechanic isn't comfortable and you're not comfortable, then the next step is the FA approval. And now a DER and the FAA is giving it their blessing, saying, okay, it's safe and secure, Gotcha. And they're assuming the responsibility.
That sounds like a lot of work.
That's why it's not that bad. If like the YouTubers are a great example. I'm working with a lot of YouTubers, Aviation 101, Josh, and Angle of Attack, Chris. We've done multiple cameras on their aircraft. They're flying the same airplane most of the time. So we've gone ahead and done the paperwork with them, and it's really not that hard, and it's worth the minimal investment if you're always operating that same airplane.
Well, and actually that was something I wanted to ask you about is, you and I had talked, maybe it was almost a year ago or more, about you were in the process of running power out into the wings and stuff, and that's obviously like less temporary, but like something that someone who's recording video all the time or on long trips would need. So we've moved beyond, and I don't want to diminish it, but we've moved beyond like clamps and suction cups and screw down mounts, right? To like now, like industry is large enough where we're actually like modifying aircraft in a certain way to accommodate that filming.
Yeah, the GoPro is the best example of a camera that has maybe 40 minute to an hour at the most record time. So the biggest complaint we hear is, battery died. You get over the point where you're going to get this great footage and bump, camera's dead. So we've developed a aircraft grade power supply that you can power the camera off aircraft power. It's a weatherproof power cable, and it's a great way for the folks that, again, if they just want to show up at the airplane, flip the switch, all the cameras power on, and you don't have to worry about them dying. You can just go all day long and keep capturing video.
That's so cool. Real quick before we round up, I want to ask people for questions. A couple people are asking about. We're seeing a lot of these like 360 cameras on poles now. So Jason asked, how would you mount that on a Cherokee? AirMac is asking any extra regulations around those. I'm assuming not. It's just another thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm still trying to figure out where I want to draw the line in the sand on those myself. There again, the size of a GoPro and a small mount on a wing strut, no problem. Now we start hanging the camera out, a foot or two in front of the strut or the wing. Are we affecting aircraft performance or are we not? I do have pole mounts available. I've considered them more of an experimental. It's not even a product line. It's essentially all of the kits, parts, and pieces. So you yourself can put a pole mount together, and that's something that would be good for you and your mechanic to sit down, because every airplane's different. A carbon Cub, no problem. Hanging a pole off the wing strut isn't going to affect the performance of the airplane. There's people hanging, deer and moose off the
right.
off of struts, and it
or
doesn't
one wheels. Everyone's hanging those one wheel things off their wing struts now.
But now we talk about a fast high performance aircraft. Could it affect it? Maybe, and it depends on the camera and the way a person mounts it. So the 360 cameras are amazing. I mean, years ago we were trying to do pan and tilt and all these things with the GoPros, and now these 360 cameras, it's like it's constantly recording the whole thing, and you can aim the camera wherever you want, and it looks like you're flying formation with somebody. So I love the shots that our customers are getting. But that one's definitely not cut and dry. It's going to depend on the airplane, where it's mounted. So it's one, feel free to reach out to me. I'm all about keeping everybody safe. Selling products is one thing, but foremost, I'm a promoter of aviation and trying to keep people safe and trying to keep the FAA from having a reason to regulate this great privilege that we have. So feel free to reach out and say, hey, I've got this camera and this airplane, and is it okay if I do this? And I can at least direct you towards the regulations and guidance that'll help you make a decision on your own.
And as you were saying that, that's awesome. As you were saying that, 72 Papa's kind of talking about how you should just build a home built, because you can just build it right in from the start.
The experimental guys definitely have an advantage there.
Okay, so since we're talking a little bit about product stuff and reaching out, you said you were very generous to the viewers of the show. You said, hey, obviously, again, this is not a sponsored piece of content, but there's a promo code. You want to talk about that? That was before we do our little wrap-up game?
Yeah, Ryan, I love your show. You crack me up. Again, anybody that's willing to promote aviation and all these YouTube channels, and I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, but a lot of the shows I watch, it's kind of the same thing. You fly somewhere and you had an adventure. I never know what's going to happen when I watch your stuff, so I love watching it.
Me neither.
I'm loving exactly. It's a blast. I'm loving watching you grow. So it takes your supporters for you to grow. So I want to support your supporters. Any of you guys that are there already using our products or want to get started, we're gonna give you 10% off for being a SuperAero subscriber. So just on our website, which is flightflix.net, kind of like Netflix, but flightflix.net, and just type in SuperAero, 2 words, SuperAero. And we'll give you 10% off anything you want.
That's super cool. Thanks for doing that for my friends in the internet.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I appreciate that. You guys should go start a YouTube channel. It's not a ton of work at all.
Yeah, that's right.
Super easy. You just do it anytime. Anyway, thanks for doing that. That's super cool. And is it SuperAero like together or apart? Because I put it.
I did apart. Maybe I'll put it in there twice. I'll do it together and apart. But I put it in there as a coupon. SuperAero.
Okay, so it's wrong on the screen right now because I did it wrong.
But I'll go and I'll put it that way too, just to make sure.
Oh, there we go. Now you're being really generous. All right. Thanks. That's super cool. Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like, I have, like, a tie-down mount from you guys, and I think the thing that, I hope you take this the right way. Like, the first time I was sitting, I was like, oh, this is like a real thing. Like, I actually need to, like, do this, because it's, like, a lot of metal and, like, compressing on that tie-down ring and, like, hex wrenches and stuff, and I was like, oh, this is, like, I feel good. Because it's not going anywhere, but also like actually the first time I was going to use it, I was just going to test it on a little flight. I was like, I don't have time to do this because it's like a real thing. So
you're like me. I don't read the instructions, and then later I'm like, oh, I should read the instructions.
100% exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's awesome. Okay, so before we wrap up. We play a game on this show before we wrap up called Short Final. I know you've seen this before, but for anyone who hasn't watched this show before, Short Final is literally a minute of just yes or no questions for Ryan. Some of them are silly, some of them are not, and the points are fake, whatever, all that stuff. There's no wrong answer. I'm going to put on some dramatic... Air Mackey's laughing at me right now in the chat. Sorry, I got distracted. I told you that was going to happen. I'm going to put on some dramatic music. Here we go. You won't be able to hear it, Ryan, but everyone else will. And we'll hear this counter. All right, Ryan Mohr from Flight Flix. Favorite airplane out of all over 100 you've flown?
J3 Cub.
Kind of figured you were going to say that. What about your favorite aviation movie?
So even though I like the antique classics, I actually named my middle son Maverick, and it just pops in my. I got to do Top Gun.
Everyone says Top Gun. You can't not. All right, favorite warbird, and maybe you've flown one that's your favorite.
Corsair.
What about tailwheel or nose wheel?
Oh, tailwheel.
What's the coolest thing you've ever done in an airplane?
Buzzed an iceberg.
That is pretty cool. What about the favorite airport you've ever landed at?
Migs.
See, that is again frustrating because I missed that.
Yes.
I missed that by a few years. I did it in Flight Simulator, in 1980, but
that's why it was so. I did it in Flight Simulator, and then I got to do it in real life in a Ford Tri-Motor, no less. So it was.
Oh, that's stupid. That is really, really cool. Oh man, yeah, Megs. I don't know. If I'm president of the world someday, I'll just have them rebuild it.
Well, I'll vote for you.
Thanks. Yeah, see, there we go. We're solving all the world's problems right now on SuperAero Live. Now everyone in the chat's mad because we're talking about Megs Field. All right. Well, Ryan, we're going to wrap it up here. Guys, make sure if you patron supporters, Ryan's going to head over to the little debrief in a few minutes, so come check that out. This has been really fun and very, very, maybe the most educational episode of SuperAero Live ever.
All right.
So we'll take that.
That's a compliment. All right.
Yeah. No, for sure. This is really useful instead of just BSing about airplanes for an hour. And I will say separately for folks, like some of the conversations about legality and those checklists, those are all on your website, right? Like because I feel like I've looked at those before.
Yep. There's a bunch of info on there.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for being here tonight. It's such a cool thing. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, and thank you for everybody that tuned in.
Awesome. Guys, thanks so much for another awesome episode. It's good to be back after a week of no SuperAero Live. I missed you last week. I almost just popped a live stream up just to see you and to be near you. I hope you're well. I hope you're all flying and participating in aviation however you can. Tune in next week. It's going to be kind of a cool show. Herwald, he's a friend of mine, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's either Mester or Meester or Meister. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Harold and I go way back, but he actually is part of the staff at Mitchell International Airport here in Milwaukee, and we were talking a week or two ago about how everything's just totally changed for them because of COVID, and I thought it'd be interesting to hear kind of he's a pilot, hear his perspective of what it's like being at an international airport in this strange new world. So that'll be next week, and the week after that, I believe, is going to be Thunderbird 3, which is super amazing, and then the week after that is hopefully Savannah Rasky, if you've followed her at all, future F-35 pilot, another person. I don't know how she gets everything done. Anyway, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week, same airplane place. That's lame. I'm just gonna sign off. We'll see you next week.